My name is John Silvester. I'm a reporter with the Age newspaper. Some people call me Sly of the Underworld. There are 5 million crime stories in the naked city, and this is one of them. It was a tip-off from a judge, a suggestion to interview a prison officer who was getting amazing results with young inmates inside Port Phillip Prison. I went to the appropriate authorities who responded appropriately, or at least I thought they did. But then there was silence. That was back in 2017. Every 6 months I would repeat the request. Each request was greeted politely, but the shutters remained up. I always wondered why. Anne Hooker worked as a prison officer for 13 years for Corrections Victoria and at Port Phillip Prison for a further 23 years. From 2005, she was the supervisor in a unit for male offenders aged 18 to 25. She was so successful, there was a waiting list to enter the unit. Recidivism rates were slashed, and she was awarded a Churchill Fellowship to study youth prison programs in Britain, the Netherlands, United States and Canada.
And in the time that I've been doing this type of work, the age of offending has got younger and younger and younger, and the type of offence has got more and more violent.
She is an expert in youth self-harm and suicide prevention, has won multiple community awards, and in 2023 received the Medal of the Order of Australia. In 2010, The Age selected her as one of the top 100 influential people for the year. She is one of a handful of experts who have the practical and academic experience to provide at least some of the answers to our youth crime epidemic. By the time she was recognised in 2023 in the Australian Honours, she'd fallen out with management. She left in 2022 and the unit was shut down the following year. Port Phillip Prison has since been closed. This is Anne's story. Anne Hooker, thanks for coming in. You're an expert in the area of youth crime, rehabilitation, self-harm, Churchill Fellow, recognised in the Australian Honours, as qualified as anybody in the country when it comes to youth offending. So take us back to your unit at Port Phillip, which had remarkable success. How first did you cherry pick the people to go into that unit?
So I was asked to set up and design a young offenders unit, and I was given no direction, no guidance, no boundaries, no money, and told to go away and do a Nike. Literally, that's what I was told, do a Nike, make it happen. So one of the first things I did was I pulled a muster of the entire prison and looked at how many young offenders who were first-timers in jail were in the prison in mainstream, not in protection, not special needs, just in mainstream. And there was 150 out of 500. So then I decided I needed input from those young men to help me work out what they felt was important to go into the unit. So I went and interviewed each of those 150 young men and I asked them 3 questions. If there was a youth unit, would you come? What would you like to see in the youth unit in terms of programs? And what do you think you need to learn in order to stop offending? They gave me lots and lots and lots of information. But of the question, if there was a youth unit, would you come? Only 11 out of 150 said they would come.
Why?
So prison is like a community within a community. And as we know, people are afraid of change. So in some ways, even if the place where you're residing is horrible and revolting and you're treated really badly and you're afraid 90% of the time, at least you know who your neighbour is, you know who's in charge, you know what they're like. So a lot of it was fear and they just didn't want to take that risk. Interestingly, I took those 11 young people and what that process did was enable me to set up the boundaries and the requirements of who should come into the unit. So then every new prisoner that came into the prison, I was able to work against that criteria and see whether or not they would fit the unit. Once I got to probably the unit being 50% full, all of a sudden, lots of those 150 who had said no were contacting their staff and asking them to contact me and say, he's changed his mind, he wants to come. Are you okay with that? Now, by that stage, I'd set the criteria. So 2/3 of that group didn't fit the criteria. So unfortunately, unless there was a really good reason for me to take them, I had to say no. But very quickly it filled. And I used the same principle of prisoner input to get the mentors who were older prisoners, there were 3 of them, who were there to help me get the message across to the younger guys, because prisoners will listen to prisoners more than they'll listen to staff. Right? And I used the same principle again in order to determine what programs were needed and what direction we should go. And then I used some of my training and my research that I'd been doing to work out what was the best way and best philosophy to take this forward.
Well, interestingly, I spoke to one of your former bosses who said one of the other unintended consequences is that staff wanted to work in the unit. I imagine it was because it was one of the few areas where you think, yeah, I am actually making a difference.
That's right. And you can see the difference. You can actually see and feel the change. Because most units, when you walk into a prison, are terrifying. You walk in and all eyes are on you. And there, there's tiers in a prison, so there's an upstairs and a downstairs. And they would lean on the balcony upstairs and just stare at you, right? And try and intimidate you. Some of them would come up really close to you and might touch you, bump you. Some of them would stand right beside you and say nothing, but again, try and intimidate you.
This is other inmates?
Other units.
Did they ever try that with you?
And our unit, they were not allowed to stand on the top tier at all for any reason. They had to come downstairs. And we stopped things that were being used to try and intimidate people. And then we talked to them about why we were doing that and why it was important for them to not do that. And if they wanted to stay in the unit, this is what they had to adapt into their behaviour and understand why that was so important.
Well, tell us about the unit that was opposite you.
So opposite us, and there was a fence in between us and this other unit, there was a unit that was pretty full on and pretty violent and very aggressive. And it was discovered after a period of time that there was a group of prisoners having a fight game that they played every weekend. Basically, they'd set 2 people up to have a physical altercation with each other. Whoever lost then had to front the jury, which was prisoners in a cell who would then determine what the punishment would be. And the punishment would be that they would be assaulted from the neck down, so you couldn't see it, the officers couldn't see it unless they strip searched the prisoner. And the prisoners were so terrified of saying anything, they wouldn't say anything. This went on for ages and ages.
So they were basically head to toe covered in bruises.
Mm-hmm. And until it was discovered, because a young guy broke down and admitted what was happening, and that's how they discovered it. But that's what real prison is like. It's not a nice place. It's not a good place. And in the time that I've been doing this type of work, the age of offending has got younger and younger and younger, and the type of offence has got more and more violent. And the behaviour of prisoners has become more and more violent. So it's interesting to watch that happen.
The homicide squad is investigating the stabbing deaths of 2 boys. The boys aged just 12 and 15.
Is fed up with the youth crime crisis. The voice of 7 News
for violent crime. It means that teenagers as old as 14 will now be tried as adults
if they commit serious offences like home invasions or carjackings.
Police stations across Victoria will become machete drop-off points as part of a 3-month...
There are too many victims and not enough consequences.
You were saying that one of the things you banned was any sort of violent video games. You see a connection between that and real violence?
Absolutely. Violence is a learnt behaviour. It's not, in some ways it may be, have a genetic connection, but on the whole, it's a learnt behaviour. And you can unlearn it. However, if you are bombarded with things that are violent, and that can be video games, movies, music, sport, peers, anything, and that's all you see or feel or experience over a period of time, it's going to make you more violent. That's what you're going to think is the right way to handle things, the right way to deal with things, the right way to do things is becoming violent. So I took the philosophy that if you want people to stop being violent, don't have violence in their face.
So there's 4 sort of pillars to the program you eventually developed. Let's go through them. Care. What does that mean?
So one thing that I heard over and over and over again from young prisoners is, no one cares about me, so why should I care about anybody else? And that really stuck in my head because A, it's very sad that they believe that. And don't get me wrong, anyone can believe that. Even people who've been raised in really good households, gone to private schools, they can still believe it as well. And secondly, because that is such a strong feeling to have, because if you don't care about anybody, then you can do anything you want to them and it doesn't matter because you don't care. So you can become as violent as you want. You can hurt them or harm them or be mean to them or cruel to them or violent to them or take things from them. It doesn't matter because you don't care. But if you're taught the importance of caring, the value of caring, why you should care and why that's so, so, so important, the minute you start caring, you can't hurt people. You certainly can't hurt people, someone that you care about.
It's interesting because that's one of the things that I think the consistent thread with so many crooks is lack of empathy. So when you do a home invasion, you're actually not thinking of the consequences to these people. When you take a tradie's set of tools, you're not thinking that you're going to ruin that bloke's job or that person's job.
No.
So, and that thread goes right the way through from somebody who intimidates someone in a shop to a hitman.
That's
All
right.
of them absolutely lack.
Can I give you an example? So one of the programs that I taught was about empathy and values and I used to say to these young men and talk to them about caring. And I used to tell them the story of my brother's car that got stolen from our apartment, from a secure garage, and it got stolen. Now that wouldn't be fine. Okay, it's a car, it's replaceable, we're insured, all good. When I told my brother, the only thing that really, really mattered to him was the fact that our father's ashes were in the back of that car. And the kid who stole them ended up in my unit. And I didn't find out until after he was moved, but he stayed right away from me and I couldn't work out why he was staying away from me. When I found out, he'd been moved to another prison. I rang the other prison and said, look, I don't want him harmed or hurt in any way, shape or form. I just want to know, does he remember what he did with the ashes? Because the car was found, it had been torched, the ashes weren't there. Now, and I said, look, if he doesn't know, he doesn't remember, that's fine, right? Anyway, they went and asked him. They came back to me and they said, no, he doesn't remember. And I had to ring my brother and say he doesn't remember. The other kids in that program, when I tell that story, would all be shocked and say, did you kill him? Did you hit him? Did you harm him? And I said, no, why would I do that? And they said, I would. If someone did that to me, if someone did that to my family, that'd be it. I'd hurt them. I said, it's not going to bring my father's ashes back, is it? It's not going to, change anything except have that kid hurt. I'm not going to do that. And they were shocked.
This is the time we pathetically ask for positive reviews to go on to Apple or Spotify. Even if you've got something nasty to say, well, knock yourself out. We're in the midst of the debate on bail for young offenders. Now, the police always say to me, these kids don't see the consequences, they keep offending, and ultimately they're going to fall off a cliff. When they came into your unit, consequences was really important.
Consequences in jail are immediate. When something is discovered that they've done something wrong, straight away there's severe consequences. And depending on the severity of what they've actually done in terms of an incident, it can be like huge change and have a huge impact on their time and where they do it and how they do it. And in my unit, we had a 3-strike you're out system. They were given a chance to learn from their behaviour, but if they could not learn and they kept repeating doing the same type of really horrible incident and they were refusing to change their behaviour, then they would be immediately removed from the unit. And the number of times I had young guys then go to another unit and within days the staff would be calling me saying, he's crying, he's begging, can he come back? And I'd say, well, no, he had his chance to learn. Nothing I can do about it now. Consequences are real.
Responsibility. You say that the crooks gloss over their crimes. You know, it's not my fault, or it was a bit of a joke.
Use excuses. And that joke thing is really interesting. Number of times I heard it was just a joke. I didn't mean anything by it. It was a joke. It was never meant to be that bad. You know, I don't know why everyone's getting so upset about it. It was just a joke. Now, that is just an excuse that people use to allow them to continue to behave in a horrible, abhorrent way. If you want a young person to be responsible for their crime, you have to first teach them how to be responsible. And you can't just straight away say, I want you to be responsible for your crime, because they don't understand what you're talking about. These young men, most of them have never been responsible for anything in their lives. Everything's done to them, about them, for them, but they don't take any responsibility for anything. So one of the first things you have to do is teach them about responsibility. And then once you have achieved that, then get them to admit and accept their responsibility and their behaviour in the crime that they have done. And if you do that, they won't reoffend.
You also had them working within the prison.
Yes, working is a very important part of their rehabilitation. Learning, you know, how to get a job, where to get a job, how to keep a job, right? And the importance of having a job and, again, taking on that responsibility, very important. Because when they get out, they have to have a job.
So as part of that program, you had mentoring?
Yes.
What sort of calibre people went in?
So a lot of them were business people. Some of them were, you know, also people with lived experience, some sports people. We did a lot on resilience and leadership. So there was all sorts of people who took on that role in terms of mentoring. The business program had specific business leaders who would come in and talk about different aspects of business. And then the leadership program had different people from all sorts of, you know, aspects of community and business and corporate, who would talk about their role, their life, their attitude, their behaviour, and how they overcame problems and issues they had. Because a lot of young people think, you know, you can't ever overcome it. Something happens and they give up, right? And they go, well, that's it. I might as well just give up. I might as well just go and offend or die. And that's, again, very sad that they think that. But yeah, so it's a very important part, and it's also a very important part which follows on to the next one, which is connectivity. Connectivity to the community. If you want these young men to feel a part of the community, you have to show them that they are a part, and they're a very important part of the community because they have a role and they need to feel as though they belong. Not that they're isolated and, you know, out there on their own and nothing, you know, they can't do anything right. They actually...
Because you said when they feel like that, the only support they get is from the gang.
Other peers, right?
And that's why they join and keep in a gang.
That's right. And who are not there in their best interests, who are there basically to use them for what they can and give them a minute amount of financial benefit or some other benefit. But if that's all they've got and that's all they're getting and that's all they feel that they're getting, that becomes very important to them. You know, I had kids who were from private schools who believed that because their parents both worked, they didn't care and they couldn't help them because they didn't understand. Now, this happens, it doesn't just happen over a short period of time, it happens over a long period of time. And communication is the key. Right? You must be able to communicate with your children and be open communication about anything, because that's the way to keep them centered and on track, and keep them connected to positive peers, keep them connected to, a positive lifestyle. Then your kids will grow up with responsibility and with caring and with love and support, and they will be all right.
You were saying that these kids may not be educated, but they've got a pretty good take on bullshit, that they can pick who sincerely is trying to help them.
Absolutely.
And they're doing it as lip service.
Absolutely. They're very, very good at picking it up.
One of the bosses out at Port Phillip said they had a group of high school students coming, boys, who were all sort of at risk. So they took them in after hours to show what they were going to face if they didn't turn their lives around. And he said they were disinterested, and he was thinking, why am I wasting my time? Then you walked in and he said, like that, you had them.
That's right.
So there must be something that they can see.
Absolutely. They can see it straight away. But it's also, I involve them in it. So those kids, before I started talking, and I was in there watching this happen, they were being talked at. They were being, and they got bored and they didn't want to listen because they'd heard it all before. So I said to my boss, can I try doing something? He said, yeah, sure, be my guest. And again, so I stood up and I asked them some questions and got them involved and engaged. And from the minute that I did that, all of a sudden they were interested again. And all of a sudden they were listening. And that's what you need to do. You need to actually get them to the point where they want to listen. They want to hear you and they want to learn, because a lot of these kids want to change. They don't like what's happening. They don't like where they're at. They don't like what they've become, and they don't know how to stop it. So they need our help.
Well, self-esteem is everything, and one of the businesses you started was the T-shirt side of things.
Yes.
How did that work?
So we screen printed Doing Time on T-shirts and sold them online and to other prisoners and prisoners' families, and all the money that was raised was given to charity. And it taught them about the process of running a manufacturing business, and they took pride in that. They were given certain roles in terms of, head of manufacturing, head of marketing, head of finance. And, at one stage, a kid said he can't be head of finance because he's in here for fraud. So he was voted out of finance and given another role. But that's how seriously they took it. They took it really seriously and wanted to learn, right? And then once a year, we would invite their families in, and the boys would give speeches and we'd give the money away, and their family could see what they'd been doing. And they were really proud of it. They were really proud of it, because for the first time in their lives, they're actually doing something really positive and giving back. So it's, again, really important that you enable them to do that.
So as well as other businesses, you got your inmates involved in producing a documentary.
This idea came from a group of the young men themselves. They actually wanted to do something more than just doing time making T-shirts. They wanted to make a DVD that could be shown to other young people in schools and universities across Australia and across the world, which would have an impact on their behaviour and make them think twice before they actually got involved in crime. It was the most incredible thing I've ever been involved in.
I was trying to remain calm and, just take it all in my stride, just be like, it can't be that bad, it can't be that bad.
They filmed it, they designed it, they wrote it, they created it, and they asked me questions.
You go up to, property, you check in all your normal casual clothes and you say goodbye to them and you get your green tracksuit.
2 sets of greens, one to wear, one to wash. Step into the strip room. Just step up back.
And they asked for a meeting with the Commissioner, the then Commissioner of Corrections, who agreed to the meeting and came into the unit to meet with the boys. That's how much they wanted to do it.
You were walking your Kelpie not that long ago and a fella came up and introduced himself as one of your old inmates.
Yes, around the corner from my house. He walked across the road directly at me and said, "Hello, do you remember me?" And I said, "I know your face." And he goes, "Hey, look, I was in your unit about 5-6 years ago and there was a group of us and we listened intently to everything you said to us and we did everything you told us. And now I'm married, I have a child, I'm working in construction and I've turned my life around and I just wanted to say thank you." Now that blew me away, absolutely blew me away. And he's not the only one that's done it. I've had people ring me from England and do it. So that's how you know you're actually having an effect. You're actually making a difference and it is actually working.
And it also saves us money because if we keep somebody out of prison, we're not paying for it. And I think there's so much fear around youth crime at the moment. It's been a pleasure to talk to somebody that can show us that there can be positive results and this is not necessarily a dead-end road.
No, it's not.
And thanks very much for joining us.
No problem.
This episode is reported by me and produced by a jet, Julia Carr-Katzel, mixing by the ever-reliable Cormac Lally, and our chief button pusher, of course, is Tammy Mills. Thanks to Tom McKendrick and Lisa Muxworthy.